Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order our meeting of Committee of the Whole 19-17 on Monday, August 28th, and request Joel Longfeld to lead us in Canada. Thank you, Joel.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command. Car ton bras se porte l'épée, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel. We very much appreciate you being with us again this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any addendum or delegation items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I would now entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Doucette. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none indicated, the record would show that, please. Adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 18-17 held on August 14th. I entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. On my right, Councillor Main.
Item 1, item 10, item 11.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Bodnar?
I'll speak to item 1 when it comes up,
one
but
as
it's
well?
already been pulled. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, is that it? Thank you. There are no presentations this evening. There are no delegations. Oh, yes, I forgot one. We'd like a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Doucette. Carried. Now we can move on to my report as mayor. Just a few items. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario Conference was held in Ottawa from August 20th to 23rd. CEO Scott Louie and I spent 4 days in Ottawa with other members of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario at the annual conference. It was a very informative meeting with representatives of the Niagara region, meeting with several provincial ministers. Canal Days, I want to again thank all of the sponsors, volunteers, and staff for pulling together to make our 39th, read that, 39th annual Canal Days another great success. The weather threatened us a bit at the start of the weekend, but the residents and visitors came out and enjoyed themselves and enjoyed what was there. We'll keep posted for our announcements leading to the 40th anniversary in 2019. This is a public service announcement about West Nile virus. The Niagara Regional Public Health has received its first confirmed laboratory assessment of the West Nile virus for 2017. Symptoms may include severe headache, body aches, neck stiffness, confusion, weakness, tremors, sudden, I can't even read my own writing, sudden sensitivity to light. But anyone suffering from these symptoms, would be well advised to seek medical treatment immediately. And the Berkeley B group fishing derby was held, and notwithstanding they had 2 hot days of high winds, huge waves, and they chose not to go out on the lake, which was a wise decision. But on a Sunday, they ventured out. The weather was better, and for those who participated, the fish were huge, the bass that they caught, and it was a good event for the fishermen and a good event for the individuals who attended at the park at H. Knoll to witness the catches as they came in the afternoon. The City of Port Colborne has received a special award Saturday for going above and beyond in supporting women's sledge hockey. Brian Thiel, the city's event and sports coordinator, and Michelle Cuthbert, who's present with us this evening, she's the head of the marketing and communications coordinator, accepted the first annual Jean Lane Award from Women's Sledge Hockey of Canada at its annual general meeting in Newmarket. The award was established to recognize an organization that has gone above and beyond to support Women's Sledge Hockey of Canada, and where we, being the City of Port Colborne, is the proud recipient of this award, and I believe Michelle Cuthbert has an award here to present to us as a city. Pleased to accept this on behalf of the city. Michelle, do you want to give us a little background on this?
For sure. So since the Valley Health and Wellness Center opened, as we accommodate sledge hockey in the facility, specifically on Rink 2, we've been hosting and promoting sledge hockey. And we originally were approached by the Niagara Thunderblades, and it just led to getting the grant that allowed us to purchase the sleds within the facility, as well as start our Learn to Sledge program that's led by Christina Picton, who actually presented us with the award because she is the captain of the national team. So we've been supporting, we've hosted clinics, and we've been hosting coaching clinics and training camps at the center for the national team, and so they wanted to recognize us. Jean Lane this is the first year they're doing awards, and Jean Lane actually is the one that brought sledge hockey to Canada. She started it was like 1980 or 81, and she drove a bus with her family across Canada delivering sleds and teaching people about sledge hockey. So they thought it was fitting to present the award to those that promote and support sledge hockey, naming it after her family. And,
Thank you.
Yes, it's very exciting. We're honored.
Louis would like to take a picture.
Yeah, we're going to get in front of that wheel there. Try taking a picture. Did it go?
Oh, that's nice and bright.
Okay.
All right. Take the lens cover.
It's off.
How do you zoom in?
Use the lens itself. You got to. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, all right.
You think it's good?
I think so.
You're welcome.
And you keep this as a display.
Yes, we're going to put it in the Valley Health and Wellness Center and the display case.
Thank you.
One more seat.
Any state of the storm. If you, I've never watched sledge hockey. It's very interesting, a lot of fun, and our CEO is an expert at the sport already. But it's something for young and old that can participate in this. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you again for being there for us. It's a Newmarket on Saturday? Sure. Regional Council's report, Mr. Barrick isn't with us, but the region has not met during August. and so there would have been nothing for him basically to report on. Councilors' items. Are there any issues or inquiries by members of the council? Mr. Doucette, and then Councilor Bodnar and Councilor Dench.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to you two, and I feel bad, and I've already spoken to CAO Louis about this, okay? When I came back, I've missed a couple of council meetings over the summer. Well, one of them in there somewhere, I wanted to know when the railroad track thing was going to be fixed at the end of Cadali Street going on to Mellenbegon to the bridge. I believe I was told anytime soon. It's still not fixed. I've been gone for 6 weeks. So at that time, I clearly indicated that I was hoping it wasn't going to be a situation like that crosswalk thing that we ran into, where every month we'd ask and it took 12 months for anything to happen. I'm hoping that I was hoping that Councillor Barrick was going to be here. Go back to the region and say, when is this going to get fixed? Because I've spoken to engineer. Engineer keeps telling me, they're telling them any time now. Any time now is when. So engineering is doing their connections, they're doing their contacts, they're doing everything they can, and yet we're still not getting it fixed. Okay, you're talking almost a year now that we've talked about getting it fixed, and it's still not fixed. So I'd like to know what the delay is. I can understand delays, but let us know, tell us. Okay? I mean, I went by there when I got back home, and that's the first thing I noticed, because you're going over the tracks. You got to slow down, because if you don't slow down, you're going to blow out something. Okay? So I'd like to know what's going on, and if you can.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Lee, can you shed any insight other than what you've done previously?
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Doucette, staff has had discussions with not only the region staff, but also with the short line rail operator for the municipality. The region is what they refer to as the junior in the situation, so they're responsible for the cost of all of that. And that seems to be, at this point in time, the issue is how they're sorting out the details with Trillium Rail on those costs and who's paying for what and to what extent. That's my understanding to date. And now, the engineering group specifically have been contacting the region on a number of occasions and requesting that we get some answers back. But to date, we haven't heard any definitive dates yet on when that's going to be.
I will undertake to speak with Chair Caslin on the issue and ask those very questions of him. Thank you for bringing that up. Hopefully, 2 weeks from now, we don't have the same issue.
Hopefully.
Actually, there have been a number of railway crossings done throughout the city, and they've done an excellent job on them.
Oh, when they do the work, they do good work. Let's get the work done.
Good. Okay. Councillor Rodner had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, Chris Lee. Chris, I think we had talked a while ago about the number of ash trees that are dead in the city. No news to anybody. But when you look down the roads, and I had a call from somebody, particularly on White Road, that travels that road to work, had the unfortunate, actually ran over a branch that had fallen off. How are we dealing with this, and how do we determine it's our tree, somebody else's tree? I'll start with that, and I got a few more questions on it.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. We actually have a policy in place that Council has endorsed, which establishes the priorities or criteria that we take and remove these trees. The first priorities is obviously danger trees. The danger trees we address first, and with the blight of the emerald ash borer, it's using up basically our entire budget in a very short order. That being said, it doesn't leave a lot of dollars left for trees that aren't necessarily considered to be a danger tree that'll fall on the road. By all means, those get addressed first. The other way of establishing, we actually, if we get an issue where a counselor or a resident phones in and tells us that there's a tree that's a problem or they think is a problem, we then make a determination as to whether it's on municipal property or on the private owner's property. Being on municipal property, we put it on our list of trees to do, and if there's any funds left at the end of the year, then we, after we've done the danger trees, then we go and start addressing those tree removals. Trees that are on the private property, if they're not a danger tree, then we tell the resident that they have a responsibility to remove it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Wonder.
So just to stay with that, so I guess it's a little disconcerting. If you drive down White Road between Highway 3 and 2nd Concession, there's like 20 plus trees there that look like danger trees to people that are driving there. Really, they are, you know, they're hanging over the road. So I guess I get the budget thing, but I really think that maybe we got to borrow money from someplace to actually either increase the amount of trees we're taking down. I don't know how to do it, but you know, there's a lot of trees out there, and a good windstorm could make a lot of them a danger tree. So I just want to tell the public what's going on, you know. And also, you said that you will, if it's on somebody's property, you've informed them that they may have to take it down if it's a danger.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar. That's correct. If there's been situations in the past where a resident has called in and they say that this tree is a problem. Well, some of those, they are on the city's property. Others, we find out, we send the survey crew out, we determine what the location of the tree is in relation to the road allowance. And we've had some where they're 2 and 3 and 4 meters back on the resident's property. If they're not creating an immediate danger based on our tree removal crews, then we leave those for the time being and spend our dollars where we do have those danger trees.
Okay, and then just one more on the trees, and then I'll jump to something else. I had a call from a resident that their neighbor has a bunch of dead ash trees. She's concerned about them taking out her hydro lines. And when she had called the city, she was told that the city can only enforce 1 tree a year to be taken down from the resident's property. Now, that's new to me. Anyways, Mr. Aguilina, is that your gig?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bonner, if a complaint is made on a tree and it's not on our property, by law enforcement inspects the tree, determines that it is dead, and then notify the property owner they have so many days to take the tree down. And if not, the city will do it and charge the property owner their taxes.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it, because I've been involved in a few of those, and it's worked very well. Because the city usually charges more than possibly the owner could get a tree expert to do it. But, so it's not necessarily 1 tree. If somebody has 3 trees that are dangerous to a neighbor's property, they could be told to take all 3 down, am I right?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bonner, that is correct.
Thank you very much, just for clearing that up. Next, fire lanes off of Pleasant Beach Road. There was a request come through that no parking signs be put on those fire lanes. And I understand from talking to the chief and others that the city has found that they own 2 of those fire lanes. So apparently, if the city owns them, they aren't fire lanes anymore. They're going to be an actual street. And the street has to have a name. I wonder whether someone could enlighten me about that process or how that happens. Is that?
I mean, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councilor Bonner, as you alluded to, Councilor, the city knows that there are 2 laneways that are city-owned. In order to name the tree, I got the tree in my mind. In order to name the street, it needs to come from council by a through report. Council can then, through that process, name that road.
Yes, Fire Chief.
Yeah, to Councillor Bodnar, if I could, through yourself. In conjunction with that, I haven't spoken to the clerk briefly about this, and it would also require that the fire lane bylaw that regulates the fire lanes would have to be revised to exclude those two roads that are now currently called fire lanes, because they no longer fit into that, because they're now no longer private, they now are owned by the city. So it would have to be changed to.
Go ahead, Mr. Bonner.
Just to continue on that, so in order to get that process down the road, and what we're really talking about is the beachgoers parking on these fire lanes, and they're not signed for no parking, so we've excluded them parking on the road. Now they're, looking for a place to park, and they see these fire lanes and think that's a good place to park. So summer's almost at an end, and this couldn't happen very quickly anyways, I would imagine. Chief, I understand, are you going to be tweaking something with the fire lanes or doing something that this might fall into at some point this winter?
Chief Carey.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Bodnar, the bylaw that designates them as fire lanes is going to have to be modified. Okay. In conjunction with that, though, we're going to have to also find a mechanism by which we name them.
Okay.
And then the city would have to adopt, I would assume, a bylaw naming them and any regulations that might come with them as a street, similar to what we do with our other streets. Whether or not they become restricted, no parking, that's a choice of council to make. I obviously have had several conversations about this, in particular with yourself and with several members of staff, as well as receiving a phone call from a concerned person in that area. I informed him what he wanted us to do was stick up a no parking sign at the end of the road to deter people. I explained to him, I can't just do that. If it's a private laneway person who owns those laneways can. Unfortunately, the city's not in a position to be able to do that. If they're going to designate it, it has to be done properly as per the bylaws that are in place. So that process is going to be kind of one would roll into the other. My assumption would be we could probably, and I'd have to look at the clerk for this, I would think we could probably combine that into one report that would be all encompassing, that we could do all of those things within one report. And I stand to be corrected on that.
Madam Clerk, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't. That would be appropriate, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Bonner.
Can I then start the process somehow? It's going to take some length of time, and if it gets worked on over the winter, then that might be appropriate. And how would I do that?
Madam Clerk, do you have some insight, or Mr. CAO?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bonner, I think the most appropriate way is some kind of motion with council support seeking staff direction to embark on the process, whether it be through a staff report or what have you, back to council.
All right. Can I do that now, Mr. Mayor?
I would suggest we do it now.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to make that motion then, that we get the process underway, let staff determine how it'll roll out, and certainly to be done well before spring of next year so that we can, have this all in place for the summer season. So that's my motion, Mr. Mayor.
Could you perhaps be a little more concise?
Get it done? No, sorry. More words? Okay.
No, not more words. Clearly, concisely, Madam Clerk, do you have it down now? What you?
The name of the two streets.
Clerk's usually good with words for something like this. So.
I guess while she's, so through your worship to Councillor Bonner, a lot of times, I think what the mayor's probably getting at is sort of, one of the things we struggle with is what staff, when it just says staff, because then we come in on Tuesday morning and we try to say it wasn't us, it was someone else. No, he meant you. So I guess if it's going to be the fire department and engineering department working together, probably, to get it done, and then of course a timeline, but you did say, in advance of the next summer season. So I think that's in there in the motion as well. So I think that might be the conciseness or the descriptiveness that we're looking for.
So Chief Cartwright and Chris Lee, charged with, maybe Dan or whoever's in there, to work on this together and have it done by March 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar. I am imposed upon the clerk to read out what has been moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, could I ask for a seconder on the motion before I read it
Seconder.
out?
Madam Demery?
Okay, the motion that I have is that the Director of Engineering and Operations, the Director of Planning and Development, and the Fire Chief be directed to bring or prepare a report regarding the 2 municipally owned laneways off Pleasant Beach Road concerning renaming, amending the city's fire lane bylaw and associated regulations by March 2018.
Does that include everything that you? Yeah. Okay, we have the motion moved and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you, Mr. Bodnar. One more item?
Maybe 2, Mr. Mayor. So a while ago, I brought up the fact that beekeepers moved a bunch of hives in beside a house that the resident is allergic to bees. It turns out that the city doesn't have anything to do with that. I just want to confirm that again, but I just got a call again that the beehives were moved somewhere on the same property. And it has to be, the law is from the ministry, 30 meters from a house or from a road, municipal road is where they can be located. Anyways, this lady still has a problem actually on her swimming pool where the water line is. It's a steady line of bees because they need water, and they've found her pool, and even when it's moved, now all the bees are around drinking water, and she can't use her pool. So I just want to confirm again that there's nothing that the city can do because she's not getting very much help from the ministry that looks after this, and was actually told that maybe she should contact the farmer that allowed this. Well, that happened, but the farmer rents the land. Then she was told, well, maybe she better contact the landowner. Well, the landowner lives in Toronto and could care less and doesn't even call back. So again, I'm saying, I just want to confirm again that there's nothing that the city can do for this particular person. It does seem, is it a civil matter? Is it a,
Mr. Aquilina, do you have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, my understanding, there is no actual bylaw right now that regulates the placement of the beehives. There's no bylaw. My only suggestion is possibly the Ministry of Agricultural and Rural Affairs be contacted. Maybe they have some regulations. You know, keeping of bees is an agricultural type of use, so I would suggest maybe that ministry be contacted if there's any regulation that they have.
There are bee associations as well.
Yeah,
Maybe the industry within themselves can
yes.
exert a little pressure.
And I'm sure this is maybe one of those weird one-off things, but it certainly isn't weird to the person that's, you know, doing this. And they she has contacted those ministries, and they just say, well, as long as they're following the regulations, that's it. So anyways, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, again, she asked if the city had anything that they could do. I don't think we want to start regulating bees, but in this case, it does, you know, it's not a good thing for the person. So anyways, city can't help her. Okay. One other thing, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll stop. Something came out from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities today on the legalization of cannabis next July. They're suggesting that municipalities well in advance have all their ducks in a row to see what regulations they will put in place, if any, to regulate however this is going to roll out. And I'm suggesting that as a region we work on this, because I don't know if every municipality wants to do their own rules, but you know, can we do this regionally? And I'll leave it to the CAO to, to figure this one out, but, you don't want to get caught trying to figure this out in June. I think we should have this done well in advance if there's anything that we have to do. And maybe a working group can be formed amongst, the regional staff and different municipalities to see how we could be way ahead of this game before it even starts. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, is there any way we can follow up on this?
Maybe I can make a comment first.
Sure.
At AMO, this was one of the topics of discussion. It was extremely well attended. The individuals presenting were very informative, but they didn't have a lot of answers. And that was the frustration of the body that afternoon. We all know it's coming. There's no regulations from the federal government. There's nothing firm that you can sink your teeth into yet. And we're going to have to, every community is faced with the same problem, so we're going to have to be very vigilant in getting the best advice from those. And this will be, you're right, the region is probably great for this area, but province-wide, and there are other communities that are facing the same problems, and that we all should be facing this together, because there could be a real mess that's come July of 2018. Mr. CAO, did you have some comments?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, definitely echo what the mayor said. I think council's well aware that there's a little bit more questions than answers in this area right now. One of the key things is going to be where responsibilities are divided between federal, provincial, and then municipal government, and then the overlap. We'll have some things dictated to us, such as where cannabis can be consumed, rules around driving and operating vehicles, rules around the workplace will probably be dictated, but enforcement of those things will probably be municipal or police, which is regional, as you've alluded to, a regional role, responsibility. I like the idea of a regional approach. Some things like our own zoning rules and things will be a city responsibility, but a regional approach makes a lot of sense. We're 2 weeks away from our quarterly CAO meetings where all the CAOs in Niagara meet. And as chance would have it, it's going to be hosted in Port Colborne. It's our turn to host, and I'll be hosting all of the CAOs in Niagara here, and I'll make sure that this item is added to the agenda of pooling our resources and coming up with a shared response. And I'll let council know how that discussion goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Danch.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll, through you to Chris. Kinnear Park there over by the senior center, we got a couple lights that have been out for some time. I guess the one resident on Clowley's called several times, and Millie's even so nice that she recognizes his voice. So maybe we could look into these couple lights that have been down for some period of time before it gets to be winter, because apparently accessibility to these lights isn't real good once Mr. Snow gets here, okay? And just one other thing on a general note, if anybody's been looking on the front lawn of the Chamber of Commerce, you'll see some black framing that's been put in place, and it won't be long now. There'll be a clock in place on Main Street, compliments of our Main Street BIA. I've got some pictures of the framework in that, but I don't have any pictures of the workings, but keep your eye out, Port Colborne. You'll be able to tell the time on Main Street, and downtown won't be able to tell time for a while, but we'll be good on the north end. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Danch. Any comments? Mr. Main.
Well, I don't comment, but I do have some items.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to recognize Michelle. I get quite a few calls during Canal Days, before and after, about that young lady that's on CHCH. They're all positive comments, and it's nice to see. And you got us out there, and that means a lot to the people in Port Colborne. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, my pleasure.
No. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Lee. Chris, do you have a date on the start of the Sunset Park basketball court? Have we set a date? I know we have the money, and apparently a contractor, but.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Main. Yes, we've actually met on site with the contractor. We've picked a location based on the topography and the soil conditions, for lack of a better term. They've been assigned the task. It's in their repertoire of things to do over the next couple of months before the snow flies. It's just a number of things that are on their docket or agenda that they have to do. So we're hoping that they can get in and prepare the base and do the asphalt before the end of September. That's our aim right now.
Thank you, Chris. And my next one is through Mayor to yourself. A few meetings ago, I asked for the invitation to be sent out to Sue Johnson from the Niagara Health Systems to come back to our council and give a status on our health care in Port Colborne and to see whether the promises she made the last time she was here are going to be upheld or something. I mean, there was all kinds of promises, there was all kinds of things, the money that was going to be spent on the urgent care, and so far the people of Port Colborne haven't seen a dime.
You'd like to know the status?
I'm sorry?
You'd like to know the status of this request?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I can't respond to that. My assistant is on holidays, and I'll certainly get back to you.
As long as it's on the radar.
Before the next meeting, and I'll get back to you personally probably tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's it? Councilor Demery?
I have nothing this week, thank you.
Very good, thank you. I just have a quick question to Mr. Lee. I guess it's Welland Street, the curve between Bridge 21 and, say, Durham Street. There's trucks coming out of the docks there carrying material that looks like it's stone, or it could be dust from our own contractor installing the services that they're selling in the area south of anyways, it's making a mess. The trucks go by rather quickly, and dust flies and is blown into the Ward 4 there. Or is it 3? 2. Anyway, what is the status and what can be done to alleviate the dust that's flying there, especially on a dry, hot day?
To you, Mr. Mayor. You're absolutely correct. What's happening is that because of the amount of materials that are moving off of that dock in the last few months, it's been very active there. That being said, the trucks are running through the wetted materials that are on the dock itself, and they're tracking it onto the street. So we have been using the street sweeper, but I think we may have to increase the frequency of our sweeping of that area.
Thank you. Any other inquiries? Mr. Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I forgot one very important item. Sherkshead Community Center, along with the local church across the road, had a 150th, Canada's 150th birthday party. And I know Councillor Damaris was there and Councillor Butters was there. And I'm not sure they're such good friends anymore because Councillor Butters was in the dunk tank. And apparently, Councillor Damaris paid money for a whole bunch of kids to go up and throw a ball and dunk her a number of times. So that relationship might be slightly strained, I don't know. But anyways, I hope there's video of that, by the way. Good, okay, I like to see it. Anyways, it was well attended. It was, you know, certainly Councillor Damaris was there a lot longer than I was, so she might have some comments, but everyone was having a great time. And if you ever wonder why, you know, it's a good reason to support these community centers. It really does bring the whole community out, and it's a total family affair, and it's just a really good thing for the community. So remember that at budget time when we're looking for money for those community centers. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I was in attendance as well, and it certainly was well attended. A lot of people had a lot of fun, good, wholesome fun.
Yeah.
And it was great to see.
Okay.
Yes, Councilor Demery, do you wish to respond to those comments?
Actually, I do, Mr. Mayor, if I could. First, I would say that's the best $20 I ever spent. It really was. The kids loved it, and Councilor Butters was refreshed. So it was a good day. But the most impressive part of that day was a room. They set up the main room with 150 years of Sherkston history in it, and it was just really amazing. It was quite informative, a lot of fun. They had a guessing game with a lot of old items, and you had to guess. There were 18 items to see how many you could guess and get right for prizes for the kids, so it was great that way. But that spirit of community there was really incredible. The local residents came out and they were able to talk to each other about their past and their families and generations past. It was really wonderful. So yes, as Councillor Bodner said, when it comes to budget time, we should bear in mind how important these community centers are. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any comments from members of staff, previous items that have come forward and you wish to respond to? Yes, Chief?
Your Worship, thank you. Not from previous items, just I got 3 good news issues that I'd like to make Council aware of tonight. The first one is Project Zero, which is funded by Enbridge in conjunction with the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council, are donating 187 carbon monoxide smoke alarm combination units to us to provide to the community. There'll be an official presentation done, I believe it's going to happen the last meeting of September. As well, Tim Hortons, on their cookie day, their cookie week, they're donating a portion of all their donations, all the cookie sales to our program in our community. And together with the Italian Hall, they're doing a fundraiser for us on the 15th of October. It's a tea, and they're going to donate a portion of the money they raise that day to our program within the city. I thought those items should be brought to Council's attention.
Thank you, Chief. You are gradually going to get one of those smoke fire alarms in every house in this community.
We're trying.
Thank you. If that's all the inquiries, we can move on then to items for discussion. The first item, Councillor Main, and moved that recommendation, and I assume it's seconded by Councillor Bodner. We want to read that out, Councillor Main?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fire and Emergency Services Report number 2017-127, subject Rural Station.
Speakers?
Yes.
Yes, it's item 1. And you, Councillor Bodner, you seconded that discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Main.
Through Mr. Mayor to Chief Cartwright. I've read this report over several times, and a lot of it is the same as what we had before. My main concerns with this report are the onus that's put on the volunteer firefighters to be the first responders. I have some issues regarding that because we've heard about volunteer firefighters' attendance. I don't know how we could put 15 firefighters in a position when their attendance is less than 50% on the average. That's one concern, and I'll just go through those and maybe give you a chance to respond to that. Could you please?
Your Worship, Councillor Main, I would need some assistance with regards to where you're going with this, because I don't understand where you're coming from.
Where I'm coming from, through you, Mr. Mayor, back to Mr. Cartwright. Where I'm coming from is the logistics of the fire hall, manning the fire hall with volunteers, getting volunteers in the area. And I know that response times are basically when the call goes in, the same as our full-time hall over here, immediately the trucks start to move, everything starts to go into action. Whereas if the rural fire hall, if it's not manned, the response time is going to be the same as it always has been. Could you enlighten me on the volunteer situation taking over for a union man or a professional firefighter to have the same response time?
Your Worship, if I could, when I wrote the report, that wasn't the intent of the report. The intent of this report is that we do not move ahead with a second rural station. We continue to function as we currently are. That's the intent of this report, and I'm not sure that the intent wasn't that we would build a second fire station. The intent is the report back to council was that we were unable to get sufficient people interested in becoming volunteer firefighters, and we weren't going to move ahead with the second fire station. We were going to continue on as we are. The only factor that comes into play at all is I'm asking council to support the fact that we continue and identify our response times as the report speaks to, 7 minutes or less on average for the urban and 12 minutes or less on average for the rural area. That's the way we are now and have been for a number of years. I'm not asking to change anything. I'm saying let's stay the way we are. The only intent of this report is twofold. One is to let council know the findings of our opportunities. Yes, there's property available to us to lease, and if we don't move ahead with the fire station, there's no sense in entering to further discussions. The second thing is to identify the fact that we're happy with the response times that we currently have, which I'm suggesting those are realistic that we have in front of us tonight. And the third thing is council should at least look at setting aside a capital reserve fund for additions and or repairs to the existing fire hall. And I'll also share with council that there's another report coming forward in the last meeting of September, where council is going to be made aware of a number of capital requests that are going to be coming forward over the next 4 to 5 years with regards to equipment replacement. I've almost got that finished, and that's why the intent of this is that we would have a capital reserve fund where we could help fund those things rather than year to year on an as-needed basis.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry. Through Mr. Mayor, back to Mr. Carter. Thank you so much for that information. So what we're saying here is the response times so far is well within the parameters of where it should be.
If I could, Your Worship, no, we've never established response times here, ever. As far as I know, in the 15, 16 years that I've been here, we have monitored them over that period of time. And prior to that, I've never found any documentation that says we will have a response time of X number of minutes to base any changes that might be needed. By doing what we're doing here tonight, at least in the future, somebody will be able to sit there and say we're outside of those parameters, bring it back to council's attention, then council will make a decision as to whether or not they want to go in a different direction. Up until now, we've never had that established. I'm trying to do that through this report, and once if council receives this report and goes along with the recommendation, I'll be then bringing our operational bylaw forward to council, our regulating bylaw, and asking them to implement those particular times that I'm suggesting in this report.
Thank you, Chief. Through Mr. Mayor, back to the Chief. I appreciate that very much. So this basically is what we're saying is the first time we're going to have a response time that will be suitable for the city to operate under the insurance underwriters. Like you said, 7 and 12 minutes. We're trying to establish the 7 and 12. Is that what we're trying to do?
Your Worship, when we originally entered into this discussion, it was brought forward by the insurance underwriters report, as you'll remember from previous reports. They don't worry about times. They worry about distance. That's what they judge on. They judge on a distance from a fire hall to the furthest reach of the community, which is, I believe, 7 kilometers. 7 or 8, I think it's 7 kilometers. So it was clear to me that council, at that time when we originally spoke about it, they didn't look at that as being the priority. We looked at the need and response. Could we, in fact, put people in that particular station? And so we went through that process and determined that, yes, there was property that was available to lease. Secondly, we held 4 different open houses without a lot of success. We've got, I think, 6 or 7 people that showed interest. I, for one, am not a believer, similar to what you alluded to initially, was quite frankly, if we wanted to build a fire station and I wanted to say we've got 15 people assigned to it, I could assign 15 of my current 39 to that station, which would be ineffective because the firefighters can't get to the station, get out of the hall, and then respond to the call no differently than they would from running from this station out to that particular area. So we've kind of abandoned that process. When I say we, myself, and I thought council had to a certain degree, and that's why we're trying to finalize this tonight, that either we are happy with the way we currently operate, and that was the feeling that I had from several members of council in conversations with them, and or we would have to make a change. I, for one, was not of the opinion that we would build a fire hall and put unionized people or full-time personnel in it. That never was the intent. The intent was that if there were to be a rural station, it would be serviced by volunteers. And if you recall, when we go back in time, I had mentioned to council there were options with regards to that. You could build a fire hall that would accommodate people, but there didn't seem to be a lot of interest in that, or at least I didn't receive any positive feedback on that. So we have in fact gone out, found that there isn't the interest. There's no sense, and I think I did say this, there's no sense building a fire hall and hoping they're going to come. It's not going to happen because of the cost of doing that type of business. So the reality of the situation is it's clear that we don't have that ability to do it. So the second step to that is it's up to council to say what is a response time that's effective for this community. I'm telling council tonight that our average response time in the urban area is 7 minutes on average and 12 minutes in the rural area. That will not help the insurance rates whatsoever. It's distance from a fire hall.
Mr. May?
Thank you so much for that, Chief. Just that there was 5 or 6 pages, and a lot of it seemed repetitious. A lot of it to me seemed confusing. I am the Coles Note guy. It has to be not a whole pile of stuff in front of me, just the facts. And you've enlightened me on this, and I appreciate that very much. So what are we going to be voting on? We have all these options. Would the option be your preferred option of when the debenture is paid off in 2018 to continue that money to go into a reserve fund for future uses for the fire service?
Your Worship, the Councillor Main, obviously that would be my preferred option, simply because of the amount of money that we're going to need in 4 to 5 years to fund a lot of things that are becoming end of life within the fire department. As you certainly know, and others sitting on council know, that a lot of this equipment that we do use is specialized equipment, high-end equipment. I'll use one for an example. An air pack has gone from $4,000 to almost $9,000 to meet the new standards. That's this year's dollars. We got 27 of them, so it doesn't take long to add up. And I think that we need to be financially prepared to be able to meet those obligations in one fashion or another. My suggestion is the money's there. And it could continue to be there simply because, and I hate to say this, but it's within the tax levy as it currently is, and it would not add to the taxpayers to fund these particular things over and above what they already are. I also recognize there's other financial needs within the city. I'm opening the door for an opportunity to set up a reserve fund. Council is the one who makes the choice as to the amount, and you may be in a better position to determine that number when you get to the next report. But the reality is, I think you're going to find that the money that I'm suggesting that we currently put into the reserve or towards the debenture payment, you're going to chew all that up in the next 4 to 5 years to offset the costs that are coming your way.
Thank you so much, Chief. I'm finished with that. That makes it a little bit more clear for me, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Are you finished, Mr. Mead, on this issue?
I'm finished with this issue.
Can I ask Mr. Bonder to make a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Chief. Thanks for the time you spent on this. I think it was a worthwhile endeavor. Even if it didn't really work out, I think there'd always be that question out there, you know, why didn't we investigate this? Why didn't we thoroughly look at this? You know, and the bottom line has to be, like the Chief said, it's got to be better. You know, and it doesn't appear that building a rural fire station necessarily will make it better and safer for the people. So thanks, Chief, for doing that. The one thing in your recommendation, and it does say we can look at everything at the budget time, but is the automatic aid with Fort Erie, or I believe you're working on automatic aid throughout the region. Can you comment on that? Is that a realistic thing to keep going on?
Your Worship, if I could, I'll answer Councillor Bodner and all of Council to that particular point. When we originally started into this venture, the point was to open up discussions with the town of Fort Erie with regards to them servicing a particular portion of our community. Not taking away from the fact that our fire department would still respond, but they would be there initially with the hope that they would get there sooner. we have to remember, and I think I've alluded to that in the report, that they are all volunteers. It takes them time to get from their places of employment or their homes to the fire hall to get the trucks to go to the call that's coming to our community. Plus, there may be certain things that they may not be able to do it. They may say, we're going to give you 1 truck versus 3 trucks. They may say that only if we're not busy. There's all these things that come into play with an automatic aid agreement yet to be determined. I did have initial discussions with both the chief and the deputy chief who are no longer there. We do have a new chief and a new deputy chief in Fort Erie. I've had an opportunity to speak to the chief very briefly about it. There is some interest. To what extent, I don't know, because they've got a lot of things in motion down there with regards to possibly relocation and downsizing with regards to their operations, as I understand it. So there's a lot of things at play. Obviously, they're going to look after their interests the same as what we're going to try to do here. Now, as far as the region goes, I actually put a motion on the floor at regional chiefs, I believe it was October, November of last year, and there is interest in us providing mutual aid to Wainfleet. The issue there would be the same as what Fort Erie would have with us. If our people are out there doing something, can we do it here as well? Or is that going to put more onus on our volunteers? So all of that has to come through this group of people in front of me tonight here for decision making. It is being looked at across the region with the hope that, quite frankly, I believe the closest station should go across the region. It should be a no-brainer, in my opinion. Whoever's the closest should go to help the people that need the help. It's not as simple as that, because there's other things that come in play, and obviously you're dealing with 12 municipal councils and things of that nature. So have we made any headway with either one of those? Not to an extent, other than Fort Erie has indicated they are willing to come to the table and talk about it.
Mr. Bonner?
Thank you. So, Chief, just to pick up the 7 minutes and 12 minutes, we can maintain that with the equipment and manpower we have. We're doing it now, so moving ahead, can we maintain those numbers?
Your Worship, if I could add, I'll answer that question as best I can. All I can tell you is, at looking at our last 5 years, and I've worded this very carefully in the sense that the key word there is on average. So I'm not going to say that we can get to every property in 12 minutes, but I am going to tell you if we have 10 calls, the average will be 12 minutes or less. So some of them at our furthest points obviously could be a little bit longer, i.e. Forks Road, that area, could be a little bit longer. There's other ones that are going to be in the Lorraine Road area that are going to be much shorter. So if you take that average over a number of calls, yes, our average call is 12 minutes or less on average in the rural area.
Okay.
If I could, as I said earlier to Councillor Main, that would be, if that became a problem, then that would be a problem that had to be brought back to council. I'm trying to establish a timeline that we have something to judge our performance on. Right now, we don't have that ability. It's my word against whoever I'm being challenged by. Could we have done this better sooner? I can at least now say to myself, we still meet that timeline, and I've got something to justify our response protocols.
Any other questions on this issue? I just have a point of clarification to Mr. CAO. The final paragraph of item number 1 calls for the setting aside of $307,000 once the venture is paid off. Then we'll continue to fund $307,000 or a portion thereof for the capital requirements of the fire department. Should this item not be included as part of a budget discussion as opposed to a separate one-off in this recommendation?
Sure. So through your worship to your worship, I guess, your question, I think the fire chief sort of alluded to that during the conversation, that this would be an amount that's in future budgets. In fact, I mean, we talk about the concept or the notion of binding future councils. This council, as it sits in its current formation, only has one budget left. But it is a thing that would be, and the chief rightly recognized, would be decided at budget time. But I think that the point that the chief is trying to make by writing that in here is that that is money that is already part of the tax levy that does go to the fire department. Council is going to have to decide when that debenture matures, what the best use of those funds are. So you are correct.
Any more discussion on this? There being none, we have a mover and seconder for the recommendation. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next item is item number 10. Mr. Main, that was your request. Could you...
Memorandum from Vance Batterway, Member of Parliament, Niagara Centre, Brownfield Sector Funding, and Seaway Land divestiture.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Danch. And discussion. Mr. Main?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My point is, this isn't new, is it? Because I think last year we were talking about the Seaway land and getting rid of the Seaway land. So is this just a rehash of what we were talking about last year? Or is it actually going to happen sooner than later? And if it is, where do we stand as a municipality to recoup some of these lands that are currently owned by the Seaway for development for ourselves? Does anybody have an answer for that?
Mr. CEO.
Sure. So, Your Worship to Council, I mean, I guess I would say it is new. The attachment's rather lengthy, but there is a particular set of pages that apply to Port Colborne. The divestiture is new. The Seaway has decided to unload, I guess for lack of a better terms, quite a bit of their land holdings in Niagara that the majority of which are not in use. They've been acquired by the Seaway for the purposes of a buffer or an allowance. And frankly, from the municipal point of view, they don't add much value to the land holdings in the city in terms of working properties that pay taxes or employ people and so on. The particular parcel I think you're making reference to, we call the Transport Canada lands, and it's the, I guess it would be the east pier of the canal, from the Valet Inco settling pond all the way up to the bird sanctuary and all the way to the canal. And that has been the subject of a number of council meetings, I think in-camera sessions in particular, so I won't go into that. It looks like that is on the list, as well as some other properties that the city would probably have strategic interests in, as well as some properties that we probably wouldn't necessarily have interests in. I think it won't be fast. That, to answer one part of your question, it's new, but it's not going to be fast. They talk in the media, I don't think it's in this memo, but in the media report, they talked about 2 to 5 years to divest of the lands. I think that it's going to have to be the subject of some council discussion or some strategy sessions on what parcels of land the city would be interested in acquiring. Without getting into too much detail, a typical process for federal lands being divested of is for it to trickle through the orders of government. So the province would have a right of refusal, the region would have a right of refusal, and then usually the city. So there is a chance that we could be the beneficiaries of the divestiture before it goes to the general public. One caveat, though, is that often when there's an existing lease arrangement with a leaseholder, that they do get into the hierarchy and can buy the property before it goes on sale to the government, to the city government, or to a member of the public. So we do have our eyes on it. We have talked about it a little bit at a senior staff meeting, and I expect that as the process of the divestiture becomes more clear to us, that we'll be able to put this on the council agenda and let council have a definite say in what parcels are strategically important to the city.
Mr. Main?
Yes, number 11.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Oh,
Are you still on number 10?
okay, yeah, fine, sorry.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Louie?
No.
No? Any other questions? Moved and seconded to call for the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 11, Mr. Main, that was yours.
Yes. Memorandum from Vance Batterway, Member of Parliament, Niagara Centre, investing in Canada.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Wadner, discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The only reason I'm doing this is because we were told we didn't do, as a city and as a council and as staff, due diligence when we were asking for money from the federal government for infrastructure. We didn't do the right thing. We didn't go through the right hoops or whatever. And I'm just wondering whether this latest information that were sent through the federal government to us, is it going to help Port Colborne? Do we qualify, or is it just something to read?
Mr. Louie, can you respond to that?
Through your worship, and I would be willing to have support from the directors of either or both community services and corporate services and engineering. I would like to speak to this. The city does in fact have a fairly good record when it comes to securing grant funds. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually been successful, going all the way back to the Health and Wellness Center, in fact, successful in securing federal and or provincial grants, OCIF funding more than once. There's some automatic funding that comes in, like PTIF, which is transit infrastructure, CWWF, which is water and wastewater funding, funds for roads, lawn for renovations. We did not get, or I should say, did not apply for funding for the downtown CIP lately. A few programs have come across our desk from the federal government that we just don't see how we would qualify. But this is what we've been waiting for. In fact, the mayor referenced this plan in a letter to our MP recently, and this is the more traditional type funding where the federal, provincial, and municipal governments cost share on infrastructure projects. I'll refer specifically to rural and northern communities, because even though Port Colborne is not northern, we are rural based on our population, as well as the green infrastructure, as well as trade and transportation. We would qualify under more than one of the components of this program, and we do think that this is something that the downtown CIP would be perfectly positioned to apply for funding. So this is in the vein of the familiar ones, if you remember the acronyms over the years, COMRIF, COIP, and so on, where there's three-way funding. And I think that we're going to try our best to secure grant funding when this is only a placemat. This is very preliminary. It's quite a large bit of money over a number of years that the federal government is committed. The provincial government is also coming on board. This is the first time since the Liberal government was in place federally that there's that partnership, and we plan on putting a good application forward and really knocking it out of the park, and then relying on our provincial and federal representatives to support that application and to try to get us success. I don't know, anything, gentlemen?
Mr. Mean, any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Louie. Thank you very much for that, because when I read this over, it didn't really say that we could qualify, because they had all these little hoops to jump over, but your interpretation of it is probably a little bit closer to the line than what mine would be. And I hope it comes up, and I hope we get it, and we shouldn't be accused of not doing due diligence like we were before. Thank you so much.
Perhaps incorrectly accused would be the commentary. Any other questions? Mr. Dance, do you have any comments? There being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. There are no further items. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There being none, I'd call for a motion of adjournment. Mr. Danch, seconded by Mr. Bodner. All those in favor? Carried. At this time, move on to the regular meeting of Council 25-17, following our committee of the whole meeting. That's your blue agenda. Wish to call that meeting to order and ask, are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none, shall be so indicated. And we should also confirm the agenda. Is there a motion to confirm the agenda? Moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Doucette. All those in favor? Carried. I call for the adoption of minutes,
special meeting of Council 23-17 held on August 14th, 2017, and the regular meeting of Council 24-17 held on August 14th, 2017. Call for a motion to accept those minutes. Councilor Bodnar, seconded by Councilor Danch. All those in favor? Carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. There being none, call for a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councilor Bodnar, seconded by Councilor Danch. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any proclamations, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Minutes of boards and commissions and committees. The Public Library Board meeting of May 9th, 2017. Could I ask for a motion to accept those minutes? Moved by Councilor Desmarais, seconded by Councilor Maine. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any bylaws, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be enacted and passed. Bylaw 65077417 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 89-2000, being a bylaw regulating traffic and parking on city roads, that being Carter Street. Bylaw 65087517 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 89-2000, being a bylaw regulating traffic and parking on city roads, that being Rosemount Avenue. Bylaw 65097617 being a bylaw to confirm appointments to various boards and committees. Bylaw 65107717 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purposes of the 7th Annual Downtown Business Improvement Area Harvest Festival. Bylaw 65117817 being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 4 to the official plan for the city of Port Colborne. And finally, bylaw 65127917 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of August 28, 2017.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I call for a motion to pass those bylaws en masse. Moved by Councilor Desmarais, seconded by Councilor Doucette. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. At this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session, and that council do not proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. And they're set out there. Do we want them read? Yes, please.
Item A, Planning and Development, Economic Development Division Report 2017-131 regarding the potential sale of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of city-owned land by the municipality or local board. Item B, Planning and Development, Economic Development Division Report 2017-132 regarding the potential sale of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And C, Planning and Development, Economic Development Division Report 2017-133 regarding the potential sale of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Thank you. A motion to accept that. Councilor Doucette moved. Seconded by Councilor Danch. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we can move into closed session. Thank you all for attending tonight. We appreciate it.